Today on Revenge Motion Graphics, we're going to reverse engineer this. This is a sequence sort of based loosely on the Expanse, and I'll put a link to this in the description below. Okay, so let's get started here. So the first thing I'll do is I found this image on a Google search of just Mars, some kind of terrestrial planet here. And I will apply an effect on this spherize by CC spherize, and as soon as I do that, I have this sort of a red planet look. I want to keep in mind that the radius is 200 pixels, so when I do a couple other things, I want to make sure that I'm using increments of 200 here. So the first thing I will do here is let's just adjust a couple of these settings. So light, let's change the direction so it's kind of coming from the right side here. Maybe what I'll do here is I'll increase the line or decrease the line height, just give us a little bit of the planet here, and I will change the light color maybe to something more blue, kind of like we had it in the example. Maybe I'll increase the light intensity and use this as a starting point here, just a little bit of this kind of a effect on the right side, just a little more intense. Now I'll just add an effect, color correction curves to this, and I'll crank up my blue levels here, blue channel, and get a nice sort of blue here. Maybe I'll also add effect, color correction, hue saturation, and decrease the overall saturation of this thing. Maybe I'll come into curves, go to the red channel, and bring down the red channel here. So perhaps something like this should be pretty good. Maybe I will increase the brightness a little bit and kind of give it more contrast. Okay, that looks okay, and I will now go ahead and basically create a new solid, and I'll make this 400 by 400. Double click on my ellipse tool to make it a perfect circle, bring that all the way in underneath Mars JPEG here, and give this thing a little bit of a glow so that we have a background glow overall, like so. Okay, and if I crank up my glow here, I'll do a radius, and I can even change the color to more like this blue. If I go back and click on AB colors, and maybe I'll make the solid smaller, just get a little bit of that glow here, and let me rename this Planet Glow. Good idea to keep things organized here, and I will go ahead and increase the radius so we get sort of a pretty decent glow here. So that's the first step, and then next thing that I want to do basically is have this planet rotate and have a lot of these other elements that we see here, kind of these light streaks going around the planet here. So I'm going to make a new null, and we'll call this main rotation control. We'll make this 3D. Okay, so the first thing I'll do is I want to be able to control the actual rotation of this planet, but I want it to be driven by this null. Okay, so if I reveal the rotation here and the rotation here, underneath the spherize, there's a rotation Y. I want to go ahead and option click on the stopwatch and then parent this, pick whip it to Y rotation. Okay, hit enter, and now if I rotate this thing, I can control it all with my null here. Okay, now one thing you'll notice is if I basically rotate this in the clockwise, it's actually giving me the reverse. So maybe what I'll do here is I'll add into this expression times -1. And now if I do a rotation, it follows correctly. Okay, so just one thing I want to fix right here at the beginning. Okay, now I'm going to roll this up here. Next thing I want to do is focus on creating these light streaks. So if you look at this animation again, we've got most of these light streaks going around the center axis of the planet, and again I want to control that with the null. So let's start doing that. Let's go ahead and grab our ellipse tool. With nothing selected, I'm going to make sure that my fill is set to none and my stroke is set to white. Let's try 3 pixels. I'm going to double click, and I get a perfect sort of ellipse here. Let me reduce this to, let's say 450 by 450. Keeping in mind that the planet radius is 200, that's why I'm going 450, just make it a little bit larger. Okay. So what I'm going to do, let me solo this, is I need to make a kind of a looping animation so this continues to loop with sort of these gaps. And the way I'm going to make these gaps is I'm going to add into my ellipse 1, add trim paths. Okay, so here I will lower my end to, let's say, maybe, let's say 34 or so. And I will make a keyframe for my offset at 0, go a little bit forward, and then kind of increase it to around 36 or so. So if I play this back, I get this kind of motion. Okay, that seems pretty good to me. I can make it quicker if I want by dragging my keyframes together. Then I'll do an option click on the stopwatch and I'll type in the following loop expression. Loop out, capital O-U-T, open parentheses, type equals quote continue. So what this is going to do is it will continue this loop. So if I play this back, it's just going to endlessly loop as long as I keep playing this. So that's going to be our starting point. Okay, so if I unsolo this, right now it's just going around the planet, which is not what we want. We want to make this thing actually loop in 3D. So I will make this 3D. Okay, and let's call this, for lack of a better word here, let's call this streak 01. Okay, let's put this below this main control null, and again I want to reveal the rotation and the rotation in my null. So the same thing that's controlling the planet rotation, I want to control the rotation of our streak. So again, what I will do is option click on Y rotation, parent this to Y rotation of my null, and again I'll type in times -1. Okay, so now if I hit play, I'm going to go ahead and actually do some rotation here. So let's do some keyframes. On Y rotation at frame 0, I'll make a keyframe. Okay, and let's go maybe 6 seconds in, and here I will do maybe a Y rotation of, let's try 50 degrees or so. So I'll put a -50. So if I hit play, everything is rotating on that same axis. But the main problem is that we're not getting this the streak here going behind the planet. It kind of just everything seems to be in the front. Real quick fix for this is I want to make sure that the Mars JPEG is not only has that CC curve effect, but we want to make sure that it's actually a 3D object. So that's why I want to click on the 3D checkbox. And now if I play this back, it will in fact go behind the planet here. But it's actually going in the different directions. So maybe what I'll do here is I'll go to my streak here, and under the expression, maybe I'll just take off that -1. So let's try it that way. Just a little bit of trial and error here. And there we go. Now it appears to be working correctly. So it looks like the main planet rotation will keep that rotating times -1. So if you look at the script here for the rotation, that seems to put it on the correct rotation, but that is unnecessary for the first light streak. Okay, so there we have it. We've got our first light streak here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more of these. So I can go to my streak 1, Command D. I should rename it streak 2. And I can start doing things like this. For example, I can go to the rotation, and I can definitely rotate it more since the Y rotation is locked to the main control, but I can still do an orientation change. So if I wanted to make this one more in this direction perhaps, I can definitely use the orientation for that. Okay, so now we've got 2 of these streaks. Or I can even, let's bring this back a little bit. I can even rotate it on a couple of different points here. So I can do, let's try a, just kind of doing a little bit of trial and error here. Let's try to do an X rotation here. Kind of flip it this way and see what we get here. So now we've got a little bit of a variation there. One thing I'll do while I'm thinking about it is I'll go ahead and go to my Y rotation for the main control. I'll go into the speed graph, or sorry, the value graph here, and I'll go ahead and add a little bit of a curve to this. So maybe what I want is for it to start really fast and kind of come to a good landing here. So let's try that. So it starts rotating, then it kind of comes to a slow end here. Let's make that a little bit more. Okay, and now it sort of comes to a nice landing there. Now for the more complex, let me get out of this. For the more complex, if you look at the example here, we've got something like this sort of complex system here, where it's one streak, but these guys are shooting off. What I've found is I can do that also with the shape layer, the same basic trick. So for example, I can grab another shape layer here. That's a perfect, make it into a perfect, let's say, you know, 450 by 450 circle here. And in order for me to sort of customize this so it has like a streak coming out here as well, what I will do immediately is right click on the actual path here, and it's converted to Bezier path. Click on that guy. What this is going to do is allow me to edit this. So let me solo this and I'll show you what I mean here. So if I grab my selection tool, and again this is after I turn it into Bezier, I can grab a couple, if I click on the path, I can grab a couple of these control points and hit delete. Oh, sorry, not delete. And hit layer, mask and shape, uncheck closed. What that's going to do is it's going to basically open up my circle here. And actually I think I wanted it to do this on a different side, so I'll grab these two and layer, mask and shape, let's uncheck closed. Now what I can do to make that line perfectly shoot out the side here is I'll put my grid guide here to exactly 360. Go ahead and lock this down. It's already locked down. And then I can grab one of these points, or rather not one, but this specific point here, and put it right on that path. Go back into my pen tool, make it exactly, I can break handles here, make it exactly that path going out. And I can sort of make this more to what I want by dragging out this guy way out here. So I might even push this all the way out, much more than I need, so that I have enough sort of length to play with here. One very important thing is you always want to make sure that there's a anchor point in the middle of this, so it will also be controlled by that null. Okay, so here what I'm going to simply do is pre-compose this. So if I go to my layer, pre-compose, let's retitle this arc streaks, And now I can lock down my main composition, double click, and I can sort of mess around with this on the left side. And on the right side, I can see my comp 6. Actually, I should really title this. So if I go to Command K, let's go ahead and rename this Final Light Streaks. Okay, and so here basically I'll unsolo it here, and at the same time I can look at this on the left side. So here, I'll make this 3D, okay, and I'll just kind of start messing with this in terms of creating this sort of system here. Okay, so basically what the way I did this is I just duplicated this, and I'm using and I'm going to change this view to, let's say, custom view 1, so I can see these guys. So they're right now on top of each other. I can unsolo them. And what I'm basically doing is I'm just going to rotate this around the x-axis, so there's sort of a overlapping point between them here. So if I click on this, and I should probably name these correctly, but I'll skip that for right now. Go to my rotate. I want to make sure that I'm in my world rotate mode, and on the green, red x-axis, I'll just rotate this down. Okay, so now I have these sort of streaks here that are kind of connected here and connected here. One thing I forgot to do is do a little bit of trim path animation, just exactly the way I did it on the original streak. So I will go into my ellipse 1 trim paths, and again I'll do the same sort of thing. I'll make this smaller, and let's go ahead and animate the offset. So I'll click on the stopwatch, go a little bit forward, and go more forward on that one. Let me solo this so I can take a look at it. So here's what it's doing here, and let's go even more forward here. I'm going to push this a little more. So if I play this back, it's kind of doing that. That's a little slow, so I'm going to push these closer together. And it looks like I forgot to increase this. Let's go ahead and move it past. I'm going to turn off temporarily my mask so I can see it a little better. So now it kind of is doing that. All right, same exact thing we did before. Option click on the stopwatch, loop out, open parentheses, type equals, continue, close, and close the actual parentheses. So now we've got it doing its thing. Maybe what I'll do is I'll delete this copy I just made, so it'll be the same animation. Command D again, and just like I did before, I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis this way. So now we've got two of these guys doing their thing. I can make a third option here, and maybe I'll do that. And this one, again, I will rotate all the way around as well to the other side. So if I look at this, I got this sort of like almost like a fork thing going on here. And all of these are doing that same trim paths animation. Okay, so that's kind of how I did that whole thing. Now let me go back into my one view here. If I play this, it doesn't really work. Okay, so a couple of things we need to fix. One is I'm going to put this below. I do want to make sure that it's 3D. And again, just like I did before, I want to link my rotation to the main control. So option click on the Y rotation, drag this to the Y rotation here. Now, if I play this back, it's still going to look really weird. And that's because we need to collapse transformation. And this is little asterisk box here. If I click on that, that gives me back the 3D properties of this pre-comp. So if I play this whole thing back, let me zoom in here. Now it's sort of following that same rotation driven by the main control, and all of those things are being wrapped around the planet here. Okay, maybe what I'll do is I'll go to my rotation of the main control, and maybe we'll increase that maybe to 75. Now if I do that, I'm going to have to fix my graph here, and I will do that right now. Okay, let's take a look at the animation. Okay, something went wrong here. Let's take a look. So sometimes what happens is the animation gets a little messed up by the graph editor. Let's try this again. It's going all the way around. Oh, so what I did basically is I made this plus 75. It should have been minus 75 because before the value was minus 50. So let's do minus 75. There we go. And now this thing should behave correctly. Okay, so just play that again. And I am going to have to go back and fix this because there's a little bit of overshoot here. So let's go back and fix this so it's not doing the overshoot. There we go. So now it's a fast start and then a slow end. Okay, so far so good. So that's how I did that split all the way around the planet there. So I can, a couple of things you'll notice is one of the limitations of this is since this is not a real 3D program, these streaks sometimes disappear if it's rotated too much. So I can compensate for that and that's my streak 2, by the way. So maybe what I'll do here is push this back a little bit in the other direction. So I'll go ahead and you know, maybe rotate it a little bit more like this so I can sort of see it a lot more. Okay, it looks pretty good. Alright, so and then I can just continue adding more and more streaks to this. One thing I am also going to do is add a little bit of glow, like this blue glow that I added to all of these, and I think that also makes it look a little bit more like the original example. So what I'll do here is let's start with I'm just going to solo streak 1 here. So here's my streak 1. This is how it looks before anything. And I will go ahead and add a glow to this. So I'm going to add a glow effect to streak 1. We'll change these guys to that same kind of electric blue. So we need to change some of these values to 60, 10, maybe a 5 on the glow intensity. I'm going to turn off temporarily the visibility of my masks so I can actually see it. So here's a nice sort of glow I added to all of my streaks here, and again you can sort of see these values. And I can just simply copy all these to streak 2 and then the arcs as well. Now something weird happens when I actually put this onto the arc. If I put the glow directly on this pre-comp, it kind of ruins that 3D rotation. So instead, what I probably have to do is copy that same glow to all of these. So I'll go back into my original, hit Command C, and I will copy them all to these guys. There we go. And then again, now that 3D property shouldn't be a problem. And I'll copy the glow, correct glow now to my streak 2. Okay, so now we've got these guys glowing and doing their thing. And what I can even do to make this even more like the original example is I can go back into my arc streaks, and you know, I can mess with this shape, duplicate shape layers here. So for example, I can go back into the original path for my streak here, which is right here, and I can mess with the endpoint. So so the endpoint is somewhere out here. So if I zoom out, I'm using the Unify Camera tool. Okay, I can see it. I might even temporarily turn off the trim paths so I can actually see this thing. Maybe I'll solo it. So if I grab the endpoint here, okay, I might even push that last point. Turn my mask controls. I'll kind of push it away a little bit so that these two aren't quite lined up. And if I turn on my trim paths, you know, they kind of come at different angles. So maybe I'll do the same thing to the third option here as well. So again, temporarily turn off the trim paths. Maybe I'll even solo this layer. Select the path. You know, grab this point here, and I can rotate it around a little bit. Kind of see where the other points are. Maybe I'll move this away so they're not all in the same location. Now this will all transfer over obviously into here. So now if you look at the animation, you'll see that they're coming at different points. I'll just need to turn back on the actual trim paths on the third duplicate. And I can even offset that. So if I go back into the system here, you know, I can mess around with, if I hit the letter U twice, I can see the trim paths. So what I might even do is make this one slightly different. You know, maybe make it longer. Also, I can do the same thing here. Maybe make it shorter this time. And so anyway, I'm just trying to make them slightly different, even though they're kind of hitting the same place. All right, so we're getting a pretty good effect here. Let me play this back in real time, just to make sure it's fast enough. So the next thing we'll do is, you know, if you look at the sample here, is we've got these kind of streaks going behind and a couple more on top and bottom, and that's sort of the same basic effect. It's the same basic technique. It's just a bunch of shape layer strokes basically with trim paths. Okay, one thing you'll notice is there's some more kind of streakiness going on here, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. That's just going to be the force motion blur that adds those nice kind of wispy edges. Okay, so let's do that. So what I can do is make another shape layer. You know, this one maybe I'll do a little bit more stylized. Let's solo this, and let's go ahead and smooth it out. Not any particular curvature, just something eyeball it. And you know, I can same basic workflow. Grab my shape here, go to trim paths again. Same basic technique. Make this one 38. Let's do a little bit of animation here. Play it back. Way too slow, so let's bring these together. And let's make this a little bit shorter maybe. Okay. And then I'm gonna, rather than keep copying this thing over and over again for my expression, I'll just, rather than writing it out, I'll just copy it in here and paste. So now we've got this thing. And then I'll just click on this shape one, duplicate that, go to the actual path here, and just bring this down. I can even change it up a little bit. Play with some timing here. I can make this the original, well, the duplicate a little bit longer, or have it kind of start earlier. So we get a little bit of difference there. And let's just do one more shape. I'll duplicate this, Command D. And again, I can mess around with some values here. I can make this longer, perhaps. You know, I can grab my keyframes here and maybe make this one longer here, my keyframe. Definitely click on the path, and let's maybe move this one up a little bit. Maybe kind of cool to overlap these as well. I can even go back here and change the shape slightly. Okay, so there are some streaks there. So let's call these, again, just lack of a better word, flat streaks. I'll put this behind the planet here. So now we got them doing this sort of thing. And just for good measure, let's put that same glow on these guys. And I can even make the glow here a little bit less in terms of its actually, it should really put that flat streaks. I should be able just to make the strokes thin anyway, just so that it's not so competing with the foreground here. So I can make all of these 1, for example. Let's make them all 1. That way they don't stand out as much. There we go. So that is how those are done. And I can even duplicate that. And maybe move this one down on the y-axis. So now we've got these. Maybe I'll lower this opacity in this guy. And maybe I'll drag him left a little bit so it's not so synced with the other one. Alright, getting there. And then finally, maybe what I'll do is I'll add these sort of just regular horizontal streaks, just kind of going across the top and the bottom. Again, same basic technique. I probably don't even need to show these, but I'll go ahead and do it. So I'll just grab a straight line, basically. I might even just be able to get away with copying this whole trim path that's already there, that I already made for the other section. I can probably grab this, solo this layer, Command V. Let's see if I can get away with that. Maybe I'll put it right on the shape one. There we go. And maybe I don't think don't need this one. So here we go. The only thing about this, I have to just move my keyframes at least to the 0 point. Okay, so here are a couple of streaks. Maybe I'll make these faster. Duplicate. I can just probably move this down in the transform. And of course, make the trim paths slightly different. Alright, so just a couple of simple streaks like that. Let's go ahead and make the stroke 1 as well, thickness wise, or the width wise rather. Okay, and just go ahead and call this horizontal strokes. And let's make a duplicate of that and move these guys also down on the y-axis, maybe here. And we'll take both of these and put them beneath the Mars planet. So now we got these. Maybe I'll raise this one up a little bit. And this one down. You can add that same glow effect, by the way, in case you're wondering. Just copy it, and we'll put them on both these horizontal strokes. Now it won't be as intense in terms of the actual glow as the other ones, but I think I'm okay with that. The final thing I did to make everything look more like the original is, the motion blur won't work on these. So what I did is I basically made a new adjustment layer, and I added something called CC Force Motion Blur. So if I add it onto my adjustment layer, it is going to take a little bit longer, but you can already tell I'm getting these nice wispy edges here. Okay, and if I render this out, which will take a couple seconds, I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm going to render this out in the preview and show you what it looks like. Okay, so here's the final animation with the force motion blur to create those light streaks with a little bit of wispiness to them. I think it kind of looks a little bit better than we had it before. Now I could keep making this more and more complicated in terms of the original example just basically had more of these streaks in different places, but I think you guys get the general idea here. Okay, so thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Please subscribe, like, and comment and all that, and I will make more of these.